They've only been here 2 years. How did BYU just become the richest school in the league? This is Locked On Big 12. Happy Wednesday, everybody. Welcome into Locked On Big 12. I'm Drake Toll from America's #1 Big 12 podcast, Locked On Big 12. Thank you for making this show your first listen every single day. We will start with Pete Sousa of ESPN talking BYU, the richest school in the Big 12. Who is the poorest and who can catch the Cougars? We'll also go into Big 12 tournament recap from yesterday and a preview of today. It's basketball season, March, basketball. And then what is next for expansion of the Big 12? Here is just a blanket, 5 minutes on everything you need to know about the Big 12, the ACC, the SEC, the Big 10, and expansion. If you hit subscribe, I get to keep my job. Hey, past Drake, ESPN's Pete Sousa, take it away. As far as money goes, overall, it has to be BYU. And the perspective I want to put it in, imagine if Baylor was the only Baptist college in the country. Imagine if Notre Dame was the only Catholic college in the country. And they kind of are. They're the flagship of that. BYU is the university for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints and its members. So from there, a large swath of that very quickly growing faith is pouring money back into its alma mater or the university that represents their values. Now there's BYU Idaho, BYU Hawaii, but Provo is the center of the universe for the LDS faith. And when it comes to their athletic department they root for, it's BYU. And the biggest member of that is Ryan Smith, who owns the Utah Hockey Club, who owns the Utah Jazz, and doesn't give a dime to the University of Utah Utes, despite his ties to Salt Lake City. Instead, where his father is a professor at BYU, he is doling out money to his alma mater to build a basketball program. They just hired the #1 assistant in the NBA to be their head basketball coach, and Kevin Young has done a spectacular job on the back end of year one, I should say, running what looks like an NBA program. He plays 10, 11 guys every night. And I was saying all through January, through half of February, stop, pick your 7, pick your 8, just find your crew, find your rotation. And he knows a lot more about hoops than I do, obviously, because they're the freshest team, the hottest team, arguably in the Big 12 right there with Houston right now. So BYU's pockets from NIL to really every other portion of their athletic department, especially as football's come along, is the richest school in the Big 12 conference. And as their brand grows, as that faith grows, that gap is only going to widen.
So do you see BYU setting itself up to be a powerhouse like football and basketball? Because now we're in a world, right, where the NIL is what moves the meter, right? Yeah, and we see with AJ DeBanster, right, going to BYU like that. I mean, that's the best player in the country, supposedly. So could they be a power football and basketball, like college football playoff Final Fours?
I know we're talking richest right now, but I want to look at a couple of Houston's NIL valuation. We don't know exact numbers, but it's argued their football program has $2.5 million for its NIL as a whole. AJ DeBonta is going to make more than that himself to play basketball, which is not the revenue sport that football is at BYU. So that just goes to show how far ahead of everyone else BYU is. And if money equates to being the best athletic department in the country, then BYU can be in that conversation. Now we know Texas A&M, they couldn't do it. They've got more money than they know what to do with, and they still can't win. There are programs like that. Florida State's drop off in the last year. They've got the money to win every year. They still went 2-10. So there's a factor in this where you've got to put together the right coaching staff, the right roster, guys who want to play for you. I'm not saying that BYU should abandon the 2 or 3-star guy from Orem, Utah, who wants to be a BYU Cougar and develops into a great 5th-year player. They should continue to recruit those high school guys and make them great college athletes. However, they now have the capital to go build more out of the transfer portal to bring in 4- and 5-star guys in both football and basketball. They're at a very, very strong spot.
Any other teams in the Big 12, aside from BYU, that have enough money to make a dramatic change moving forward here in the next few years with this change in the landscape?
Yeah, it's Texas Tech. Texas Tech has to be right up there with BYU for me. And I'm sure UCF will catch on. Houston, what the struggle is for me, Houston, even Colorado right now, who has an excess of income because of Deion Sanders, they're recovering from the last few years of losing football. And when your football team is lost consistently or even lost in the last few seasons, you're making the move up like Houston or UCF or Cincinnati did, you've got to make up for a decade plus where Baylor or or TCU have made that Power 5 money. Now those schools are coming into their own. They're going to struggle, but Texas Tech is not. I mean, even Oklahoma State, as much as they would love for T. Boone Pickens to rise out of the grave and give back some money, these schools who have been there are going to be okay. The reason I bring up Texas Tech, the Matador Club, is maybe the best NIL collective itself in the entire Big 12. And they just opened a $245 million football facility too. So the facility arms race, they're right there. The Matador Club, they're right there. And I can tell you, I confidently tell you, you offer a kid $500,000, but we have a cool new hot tub and a podcast room, and another university offers him $2.5 million. That's a very different story. Kids are going to start betting on themselves, caring for themselves in the NIL era of college football. So if you're Texas Tech and you can not only offer a brand new hot tub and a podcast room, but also $2 million in NIL, that's where the Red Raiders are going to start to win.
Hey, just as an aside to what you said, that's great insight, by the way, about, betting on yourself, but also the finances are there. Yeah. Tad Boyle, I flat out asked him last week. I said, is Dion doing anything for you guys, like recruiting wise? And he was just like, no, it really doesn't. It really hasn't moved the meter. And that gives you the idea of just how important money is over identity, over, it's just like, you can have the most exciting, the biggest lightning rod in the country at your school, unless he's making a dedicated effort to make money for a specific program, right? Or if you don't have the money for the alums, it's just not there. Or from the collectives, it's not there. It doesn't matter. Does that make sense?
No doubt. And part of this is the coach himself or herself. Like, think about Kim Mulkey at Baylor. There was a difference between Kim Mulkey and Baylor. I think about Jimbo Fisher and Texas A&M. There's a difference in who A&M is as a program and the coach. A lot of these players aren't committing to Duke necessarily. They were committing to play for Coach K. Not committing to Kentucky. They're committed to playing for Coach Calipari. You saw that with his mass exodus of players at that university when he left. These kids fall in love with the coaches and the NIL more than they do the universities themselves, especially now more than ever. You think about the majority of the roster at Colorado, large majority. This goes for the same thing at Baylor, Texas Tech. They didn't grow up fans of Texas Tech. They grew up in South Georgia as a fan of the Bulldogs, but their best opportunity to play college ball was at Texas Tech. So that is where they're going. These kids are now committed to Joey Maguire. They're committing to a Kim Mulkey at LSU. They want to play for a coach. So they want to play for Deion Sanders. There's not a basketball player who gets to play for Deion Sanders when he commits to Colorado to play basketball. So that's a huge piece in this.
Hey, who is in the most trouble financially in the Big 12 as far as just a school that might be stuck in the mud because they don't have the resources to move out of the mud?
Again, Houston and Cincinnati come to mind at the very first. The problem for those two, Houston's the 7th, 8th biggest show in town because the Astros are there, because the Texans are there, because the Rockets are there. There are so many things to do on a Saturday night in Houston before you go to a Cougars football game. Does that mean that they're buried? No, but it's going to take a lot more to get out. Cincinnati, you have the Reds, you have the Bengals. So less people are concerned with college football there than they are the NFL. And we already know that's a tough product to compete with. Those two schools are at odds because many of their donors are sending money to the Astros first. They're buying a booth and going to see the Rockets play every weekend first before they're giving to the university itself. And then as far as these long-term tenured members of the Big 12 go, Iowa State, Jamie Pollard, their athletic director, has been very vocal about struggles with money in that university. He tweeted this out, I guess, yesterday, talking about how Arizona State will now bring in its athletic department as a part of the university, treating them as a college within the Arizona State brand. And Pollard said, I wish we could do that. That's another $50 million we can make from our university. He has now put on hold projects at Hilton Coliseum, and they have stalled a wrestling facility that was going to be built on campus, saying that he cannot move forward with those projects with the new revenue sharing model in college football. So Iowa State has been the most vocal about needing help with money because they just don't have enough right now to support what is going to be asked of this $22 million revenue sharing model that's coming soon. Pause. Today's show is brought to you by Supply House. Look, boss, I just bought a house, and little did I know, it's like $300 here, $400 here, $500 here for this and that and the other. Save money with Supply House. Get the supplies you need from the site made for skilled trades. Supply House, HVAC, plumbing, electrical work. They're so easy to use. And their website is packed with helpful resources. With a complete inventory of over 200,000 parts from 400 plus top brands, you'll find exactly what you need delivered fast from coast to coast. Need help with an order? Supply House offers expert support and industry-leading service, so you'll always talk to a real person. And for trade pros looking for an extra edge, their free Trade Master program offers exclusive perks like a dedicated phone line, free shipping, discounts on every order. Thousands of skilled professionals are already taking advantage. Now it's your turn. Join the Trade Master program today at supplyhouse.com/TM and start ordering plumbing, HVAC, electrical supplies with just a few clicks. Plus, use promo code SH5. That's SH5 for 5% off your first order. Supplyhouse.com. Day one of the Big 12 basketball tournament is in the books. At the time of recording this, we are under 3.5 minutes to play in UCF and Utah, and it is God awfully late on the East Coast, so I'm already doing a show because this game got out of hand. Let's start from game one of the day and give you a quick rundown of what happened yesterday for a preview of today, when schools like Iowa State test their skill in the Big 12 tournament, where we see West Virginia possibly solidify its spot in March Madness. Will Baylor miss the big dance? Some are saying with a loss today they would. And then Kansas, who is the 6th seed in the Big 12, one of the worst seasons you could draw up under Bill Self. Can they get an emphatic win? First off, yesterday, Cincinnati 87, Oklahoma State 68. Of the teams remaining who have played, Listen. Of the teams remaining who have played, the most dangerous one of them, the Cincinnati Bearcats. Why? They already have a good basketball roster. Can we pause for a second? I don't know if I like the court. I don't know why we're just like, you know what? We'll make this court way better. A bunch of little small lines and just kind of put them out there in like a V shape. See? It's going to look cool if you stare at it long enough. I feel like Mike Gundy after 3 or 4 beers behind the wheel. Cincinnati gets a win over Oklahoma State. It was a 87-68 pummeling, too. At halftime, it wasn't that close. Second half, Oklahoma State cut it within like 9 or 11 or something like that. I was watching it work, and Cincinnati runs away with it. They are 18-14 in Big 12 play. They'd be a very high seed in that random Vegas basketball tournament they're going to do this year. And to me, they have the best opportunity of remaining teams because of their talent level, because of their competitive level, to make a run in the Big 12 tournament. I also believe, based on who they would play against, that being Iowa State and BYU, who I already told you I'm rooting to. I don't want those two schools. I don't need them to win. I'm cool if they win. I don't need them to win. Reason being, what happens if Dallin Hall gets hurt? What happens if Taman Lipsy gets hurt? And I know for you, the fan, or for you, the Big 12 fan who are brand new because you're a big BYU fan, that you don't like to hear that. But honestly, Big 12 teams who win the tournament don't go on to have massive success in the NCAA tournament all that often. You don't have to do it. Some of you could earn or use some rest. Iowa State definitely in that category, baby. If you're BYU, try to stay hot. Cincinnati gets a win. They feel very dangerous to me moving forward in this tournament. TCU. I mean, I had all my eggs in the basket, man. 9-11 in Big 12 play. A couple of weeks ago, we're talking about, okay, the Horned Frogs have played themselves back on the 11 line. They're in the bubble. Their last 4 in, last 4 buys. The TCU Horned Frogs are back. Wrong. How do you do this? How do you lose to Colorado, man? Colorado is the worst team in the Big 12, and the Buffs, they lost a lot after last season. They won that tournament game against Florida. They were very good. They lose a lot to the NBA draft, to the pro levels. And they were just bad this year. I give them a bit of a free pass with TCU. You can't go anywhere. Jamie Dixon's it. Who else are you going to get? He's it, man. Jamie Dixon's the greatest basketball coach in modern TCU history, which is not saying much, but you can't fire him. He's had enough good teams. The old Desmond Bain years. He's had enough good teams. You can't fire the guy. He's had great runs in March Madness where they've given teams a run for their money. But gosh, it's got to suck to be a TCU fan and just not be able to find consistent wins under Jamie Dixon. 69-67. Can Colorado pull a massive upset today? I don't know about that. Arizona State, Kansas State. That's it. That's it. That's it. Everybody, we're good. We're going to fire Bobby Hurley. The news could have already broken by the time you're listening to this. It is past time to fire Bobby Hurley. If his name was not Bobby Hurley, he would have already been canned. 71-66, Arizona State loses to Kansas State. Kansas State is the second most dangerous team left alive right now, sitting right there with the Cincinnati Bearcats. I don't know if Kansas State has enough juice moving forward. There were these huge NIL deals they crafted in the offseason, and Coleman Hawkins is very good at basketball, was great yesterday. Now you're playing like day to day, and you've got to go out and get wins or your season is over. You're going to that weird Vegas tournament or the NIT. Kansas State gets it done. Fire Bobby Hurley. I like Jerome Tang a lot. He's my friend. UCF over Utah. Utah should fire its coach. There we go. Sweet. Check. Did that. Love the effort. Honestly, I hope they accept an invite to the NIT. I really like the effort Utah displayed in this game and that they displayed toward the end of the regular season. They made that BYU game competitive in the first half. Credit to the Utes players who are doing this without a head coach, still finding a way to make things competitive, to make things interesting. I'm rooting for Utah basketball if they're in the NIT. And coming up today, Cincinnati, Iowa State. I've told you, Milan Momcilovic, he's been banged up. Taman Lipsy, he's been banged up. I'm okay if you lose. You don't need this win for anything. Maybe to move from the 4 line to the 3 line. All right. Maybe to solidify yourself on that 3 line. Okay. I just don't think it's ultimately going to behoove you to wear your guys out. Maybe you win this one, but don't take it too seriously. Because these games are a fugazi. They don't matter for that much if you've already punched your ticket and have a high seed. Iowa State does. Colorado, West Virginia. This is a best case scenario for West Virginia because now they can pick up another Big 12 win. They're going to do that against Colorado. They're 20-12. You cannot keep a 20-win Big 12 team out of March Madness. West Virginia, congratulations, you're going dancing. You will beat Colorado. Kansas State, Baylor. Jerome Tang versus Scott Drew. Tang has had Drew's number, man. I still think Baylor's got an edge, but thinking about the 18-14 Baylor Bears, that's a team you want to pick in March Madness. That's a team you want to let into the tournament. Oh, if they lose, and Kansas State could move into a 17-16 squarely Vegas ready position with a win over the Baylor Bears. A win over now perennial powerhouse Baylor. Jerome Tang cannot play his way back into the NCAA tournament unless he wins the Big 12 tournament. But a win against the Baylor Bears is step one. I think this one's close. Baylor slight edge. Don't be shocked if Kansas State wins it. We could see a classic that ends up pushing our 9:30 Eastern game between Kansas and Utah back. Sorry, Utah fans. Salt in the wound. I didn't mean Kansas and UCF back. UCF's good. I think UCF's feisty. Good as in like a low-tier Big 12 team, but good as in they can still make some noise. But Kansas plays their season for one reason and one reason only, tournaments. Namely the Big 12 tournament in their home arena in Kansas City, Missouri. Give me the Kansas Jayhawks to win this game, and that is today's slate. Coming up, what's next for expansion? Let's just break it down, make it easy for you. With ESPN's Pete Sousa, this is Locked On Big 12, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Today's show is brought to you by FanDuel. FanDuel's the place to go during March Madness. Did you not know that? FanDuel's where I win a lot of money. And right now, I can give new customers $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. FanDuel.com for your shot at $150 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Expansion, dude. Where are we going? Specifically with the Big 12. Because it's sort of like, I'm a forward-thinking dude, but I also I'm sitting here in the shadows of Villanova University where I grew up, right? I mean, that program, the Big East, has just changed so much over the last 4 or 5 years. ACC people. I mean, what is the ACC now? So where are we going? with these conferences and with the expansion and realignment, what's the next move that you see happening?
Yeah, to say that the ACC is unstable is something that it is objective now when you consider Stanford and Cal are members of that conference. We forget that a lot. We've kind of assimilated to the idea that Oregon's in the Big Ten. I think a lot of people are used to them on football, so many marquee games. Stanford and Cal weren't on TV very much in the ACC. We haven't wrapped our minds around it in totality. That league is kind of grasping at straws. And with their new money algorithm, this way that they're going to split up revenue based on how big your brand is, that's going to make schools like Louisville, Virginia Tech, NC State a little more upset, knowing that 1 or 2 bad years of football could bury them in the doldrums of the conference. And if they're making $6-7 million less in that year, that only puts you, as you mentioned, in the mud even more. So while Florida State and Clemson and Miami are all going to win here, schools like even North Carolina, who's in the middle of the pack from a viewership standpoint, will not exactly benefit from this new model where the ACC is going to pay you more based on your brand size. So that's the first thing to look at, is the ACC's instability. The second thing I look at is something we talked a lot about in the summer, this last summer. That's basketball. Gonzaga, what they bring to a conference like the Pac-12, and UConn, what they could bring to the Big 12, or San Diego State from basketball to football as well. And I just don't think Brett Yormark, with the instability of the ACC, is ready to take a basketball-only school, because what we know is that football keeps the lights on at the baseball stadium. There's no arguing that. Baseball doesn't make money outside of 3 or 4 universities in this country. It's not something that I'm, touting around that this is a good thing, but football is the bell cow. Yormark knows that. Even if UConn is generating $50 million a year in revenue in basketball, if they go 5 years of bad basketball, 5 years, they are automatically dead weight in your conference. That is understood about Gonzaga. It's understood about UConn. Anyone who makes their bet on basketball. So you look at the ACC, you've got to go there first and see Louisville, who would not be very happy with this new algorithm they've built, to a Virginia Tech, to an NC State. Even Georgia Tech could be a great addition to the Big 12. Brett Yormark says we're open for business. We're always open for business to make moves that will benefit this conference. Those moves will likely come from the ACC. They won't be Memphis. They won't be USF. I believe Brett Yormark is holding out for the right move to bolster this conference, not add dead weight.
Could this happen over the course of the summer?
Yes. And the reason that it could is now Florida State and Clemson have the power to exit the ACC for a fee that's much less than the $500 million or $700 million people threw out there. Oh, well, they want to leave. They got to pay all this money. Now you can start to expedite that process, given the fee to exit the conference is lower than we expected, sitting around that $175 million mark. Those schools can afford it. And the second they pony up that money to do so, now Louisville says, oh, we could kind of do that too. And from there, if North Carolina or Miami also follow the curtails of Clemson and Florida State, we understand this grant of rights and the TV deal with ESPN, that league has to keep 14 schools. They must keep 14 football schools. If they dip to 13, from there, a lot of their contracts are becoming null and void. That's when phone calls can happen between Louisville and the Big 12. That we saw it with the Pac-12. Once that grant of rights starts to seep those cracks, things start to seep through, it is an avalanche. So watch Florida State, watch Clemson. If they make a move this summer, Miami will do the same. North Carolina will too. And from there, it's mass chaos. But I can confidently say by 2030, when the exit fee is more like $70-ish million or less for those schools at the top of the ACC, something will have to give.
I mean, it's amazing. It's so much to bite off and try to chew on. When you talk about football in the Big 12, there's a loss taking place this offseason, and it's Travis Hunter and it's Shedeur Sanders, and we'll see what happens with Colorado next year. Obviously, the Deion brand is still there. What do you think about the coverage of Shedeur Sanders heading into the draft? The reason I ask is, I'm an ESPN employee, so I'm not looking to begrudge or talk poorly about my employer at all. I do find it interesting that people on other networks, or, Todd McShay's reporting on The Ringer about Shedeur Sanders, and maybe having a bad attitude during some of these meetings with teams, right? And you don't hear it at all from ESPN, really, because we know what Deion's like when, you kind of cross a line with Colorado. What do you make of all that? All that smoke and, the reporting around Shedeur, and Are there reporters maybe holding back? Because when you talk about the draft and it being on ESPN, there's going to be a lot of Travis Hunter, a lot of Shedeur Sanders. You want Deion to be involved. That'll really move the needle. What do you make of all this stuff that's going on right now around Shedeur? Not so much Travis, but Shedeur recently heading up to the draft.
It's a very complicated situation. It's the same reason that, if somebody is a credentialed member of the media at a university, and you'll get this, the last thing you want to do is write an article, an opinion that says X coach should be fired, because then the SID at the university picks up on that and you're blacklisted from ever showing up to an event ever again. So you don't want to bite the hand that feeds you. And look, Colorado, Deion Sanders, he feeds a lot of the national media right now, for better or worse. People love controversy. When Deion takes a misstep, people love to pick it up. When Deion does something positive, they love to pick it up because he's such controversy is the right word. He's a controversial figure in sports. And now his son is getting roped into that. And we see with Bronny James, the whole Stephen A. Smith thing that happened last week. You are the son of a superstar, and the pressure that comes with that means the national media will talk. And many have talked negatively about Shedeur. I just see a confident kid in the same way that Cam Ward's confident, in the same way that Quinn Ewers has said some really confident stuff to the media over the course of the combine. That's what Shedeur Sanders is doing, but he's got the spotlight on him. The target's on his back because his last name is Sanders. His dad is Deion. Shedeur is a very confident quarterback. That's what I want in a program. But every year we hear this about some kid. A couple years ago it was C.J. Stroud. Oh, his IQ's not high enough. Oh, he can't pass this IQ test. Okay, now he's one of the best young quarterbacks in the NFL. People are, line out the door to watch him play.
Okay, yeah.
Right? That's what we see with Shedeur Sanders, is you're going to find something where the national media wants to write a headline, where somebody wants to write a headline. I think ESPN's done a good job of playing it down the middle with Shedeur, saying, look, he'll be a high draft pick. And we don't know about any of these guys, whether they're boom or they'll bust. And I don't doubt, knowing the moxie Deion carries, that maybe Shedeur walked into a meeting with the Giants and didn't take it as seriously as he did a meeting with somebody else, with the Patriots.
I think it's all calculated. I think it's all 100%. It goes back to, it goes back all the way to John and Jack Elway, right? Yeah. I mean, and then it goes back to the Mannings. This is nothing new. Yeah. So I like how they kind of can position themselves. Do you think Colorado next year will have the same, is this going to be when I was younger, it was Florida State didn't recruit, they reloaded, Are we looking now? Is Deion like the next Bobby Bowden in a sense, where he's going to get the best guys in the country to come play for Colorado year in and year out, that as long as he's there, there's going to be a turnover that includes the best athletes in the country? Or did we have an exceptional year last year because of Shedeur and Travis?
We've got to understand you're replacing a top 3 draft pick and the Heisman Trophy winner. No matter what program you are, that's going to be very hard to do. But Juju Lewis coming in at quarterback, the true freshman, will be a star for them. Caden Salter also coming in creates a massive storyline over the quarterback battle. How does Deion Sanders level this quarterback battle and create competition out of it in this spring? And my favorite part of what Deion did, he didn't go get 50 guys again in the portal. He said, you know what, let's get 20, 25 and have positive attrition. If you leave our program, cool. We'll plug and play. We'll fill the holes where we need it. We don't need massive overhaul. He brought his bags. They were Louis. They won last year. Their defense is going to be good again. And he's hiring NFL caliber assistants in his program as well. The fact that he didn't overload from the portal shows me he feels confident in the longevity of that program, the consistency of that program. And that's a really good sign for a coach. You look at G.J. Kinney, who's at Texas State, who brings in transfers year in and year out. It's just kind of what he does. We thought for a while, hey, Deion's going to run an AAU program, revolving door. No, he didn't do that this offseason. He wants to build stability in Boulder. That's a really positive sign.